Hello, my friend.
What's happening, brother?
How
I
are you?
am I am profoundly happy to have the best co-host in the world on with
Oh,
me today.
that's sneaky, bro. You hit it at the front end of the episode. That is
I
sneaky.
had it written down in my notes 5 times here. I had it more than
Wow.
the content for the podcast.
No, I give you that one.
So
To
now I can
sneak
just
it in
wrap.
right at the beginning is incredible. I have to give you that. Doesn't mean I won't try and get it in at the end, though. But yes, brother. Glad to be back. I appreciate the patience with us in between these episodes. We had some personal endeavors we had to take care of this last week and a half, but we'll be back on pace from here on out. And I wanted to talk about how the advantageous nature of the industry is absolutely sickening because I had a personal experience this past week where I had a meeting with a young artist and she's so incredibly talented. She has such an incredible voice, such a artistic prowess that you don't regularly see. She's trained herself to play a variety and multitude of instruments. She's a sick drummer, great guitarist, and her vocal is absolutely incredible. And like most artists, she was misguided and she wasn't necessarily sure about where she should go or what she should do in the situation and wasn't sure how to come across marketing tactics and whatnot. And the deeper we dove into the conversation, she was explaining to me that she's currently represented, quote unquote, I use that term incredibly loosely. Excuse me. She's currently represented by a manager, again, quotations, who has her on retainer on a month to month basis. So this manager is charging her 5 grand a month. Okay, to I don't even know what she was trying to do for her, but apparently setting up photo shoots and sessions for her that she ultimately ended up finding out on her own accord that the math wasn't mathing. She was, you know, saying that session rates were far more expensive than they were doing
Wait,
one photo shoot a month.
sorry, I gotta figure this
Yes,
out.
yes.
So 5K retainer plus shoot costs on top.
For some basis, for some instances, yeah. But she
That
was
makes me
trying to say, she was
literally
trying to
feel
tell,
sick.
yeah, yeah, that's exactly how I felt. So she's telling her that, she's using this stuff to like, solicit sessions and whatnot. But this girl just put two and two together and realized that the math ain't mathing at all. Like the rates in which she then found out from a very credible songwriter in the industry that she was just being taxed out the ass. She felt some type of way and rightfully so. So I felt like it was some karmic endeavor that had been delivered to me in the sense of I just laid it on this girl and I gave her for an hour and a half, 2 hours of a conversation. I gave her all the insight that I possibly could into what she needs to do. Right. She's got a great artistic image. As I said, she has a vocal that is incredible, like high caliber
Mm.
vocal. She has good accolades and a strong resume. She had come from a great avenue of exposure. I don't want to pinpoint it too much just to overexpose someone, but she had a great establishment. And I just try to provide whatever insight I could into how she can move marketing wise. And some of the most basic things that I was explaining to her, she was so unfamiliar with. And it's almost like there needs to be a universal guidebook that's created for these artists that are coming into the industry. That's like not necessarily the music industry for dummies type approach,
Mm.
but something that just explains the do's and don'ts, because so many of these artists early on in their career and way too early on in their career, they strive for management because they think it's like a necessity and they think that the manager is going to be the one that takes them to the next level. And I've experienced that so many times in this game that it needs to be a PSA. It needs to be a public service announcement for these artists that oftentimes they confuse the dynamic and the roles of what a manager and an agent is supposed to do, because people think that a manager is just all of a sudden going to come along and take you straight to the mountaintop and be able to solicit all this business and do all these things, which isn't technically even the legal role of a manager. An agent is the one that's actually supposed to solicit business on an artist's behalf. And a manager is supposed to help you with your overarching career goals and arc of what you want to do and the brand vision and the day-to-day, right? And most times, like 97.5% of the time with these artists that I meet early on in their career, just wear a few different hats for yourself early on and save that 20% commission that you would be giving out for what you don't require that early on anyway. Like, market yourself, move around, talk to a couple producers, get in with some other writers or whatever might be formidable to you in your approach, and allow the universe to kind of bring that to you when the time is right and your momentum has reached a certain plateau or a certain threshold, I should say. The management will find you. You understand? And that's what these artists need to keep in mind, is keep your wings open, keep going, keep expanding, keep pushing, and eventually that'll land at your doorstep. But thinking that you require that from early on, which I'm not going to take away from the situations, obviously, that have benefited the artists when they've grown together from the early get-go. But that's not usually how it works, man. And it just made me so sad to come across this artist who I hope things transpire for her in a different light. But it's sickening, man. Certain aspects of this industry are fucking gross.
Question in a second, but I think this is a real issue I think the industry faces. I don't know any other industry that's as snaky as the music industry. It's
fashion.
It's insane. But even in fashion, there's a business model that is more simplistic behind that fuckery.
Absolutely.
Right? So that you sell product or you don't.
Yeah.
You know, you create...
I mean, more in like the predatory nature of like young models and all the the Terry Richardsons of the world, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think that the difference is, for me, and I think what I've really been noticing a lot lately is I am blown away by how hard it actually is. And I think this is something that I have to continue to remind myself. I'm a business-led creative person. Mm-hmm. My creativity is channeled towards finding options and opportunities for business. But that's a very different wiring of my brain to an artist. Mm-hmm. And I constantly have to remind myself that artists aren't built like us.
Yes.
And the best ones really aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough between like trying to find a unicorn and trying to find the creative mind that can write the song and produce the song and market the song, and also understands the contractual obligations of a label agreement, understands how to run everything through a licensing and sync department, and like that is a unicorn that doesn't really exist.
I've never seen it. Ever.
And I think that's,
without them being jaded by all that knowledge that they possess, you know what I mean?
73 years old because it's taken them that long to acquire it.
Exactly.
You know, so as a result, it's kind of like there is this giant gap in the industry, and the gap exists because of the business model and constraints that we run under. Mm-hmm. You know, in any other world, you could take a talent like that, implement them into an advertising agency as a creative entity in a junior copywriting position, pay them a decent salary, and skyrocket them into a creative director role and beyond. Mm-hmm. But this business model doesn't really allow for that. And that's where the predatory side comes in. And that's where there's a lot of confusion, because there's a lot of different ways you can cut up a management agreement. There's a lot of different ways a label agreement can be done. There's masters ownerships, then there's the sync and licensing side. So there's so many areas for somebody to comprehend. And lately I've really been like feeling sympathetic for artists, because I think that it's really difficult in this current... last episode, I ranted and raved about how much of a great opportunity it is to be an artist. And I did get some pushback on that. That is valid. Like, yeah, everything I said was true. I'm violent agreement with everything I said. I don't take anything back. But it just opened my eyes a little bit to like, if you really want to be one of the best in the world at making music, you better be in that fucking studio.
Yes.
You better be writing. You better be producing. You better be building hundreds of songs in your unreleased catalog, and testing that out and doing it, and then before you even get to the marketing, let alone the business side of it. So
Mm-hmm.
I do see this conundrum that
Mm-hmm.
we face of
Mm-hmm.
like, it all can't be done at the same time, you
No.
know? And I think that's part of leads to my question to you around, in your gut feeling, and we've spoken about this a lot over multiple phone calls, but
Mm-hmm.
in your gut feeling, what is the solution to this conundrum?
I think self-empowerment from the perspective of an artist. I think a lot of times, just like any other industry, people want to skip from 0 to 100, you know? And I think it correlates back to what you're saying right now. It's essentially you can't skip the developmental phase of being an artist, because you and I preach the same language in regards to what you were just touching on. Is the first thing that I always recommend to artists when they are starting out is, do not be afraid, and make it a matter of it being a mandatory act for you to be engaged and locked in the studio, for you to develop your sound, right? And out of 100 records that you create, statistically, it's on your side that you're going to find, let's say, 5, 10, 15 of them that are undeniable knockouts. Okay. And formulaically, they fit the landscape of what quantifies as a hit or a breakout sound or whatever. And that only comes from the time and repetition. You have to get those reps in, right? It's like any other industry. If the problem with artists and the landscape of music is that people don't recognize how to separate passion from profit, right?
Mm.
And they sit in a situation where they think that they have to create this scope of art that is so true to them artistically, and it checks all these little things and whatnot. But the reality is, it's just like any other line of work. If you don't show up for your job for 2 weeks, your ass is getting fired. You understand?
Yeah.
Or you're getting left behind and you're getting lapped. So you have to recognize the different methods for what entails being an artist and what that job title and scope actually is. Whether it's showing up and learning how to develop content one day, whether it's staying in the studio, whether it's developing your brand arc and goal and outline, that's your job. Your job is to be an artist every day in one facet or another. Now, going back to the early part of it and to answer your question of how you can kind of rectify this situation, I think it's a full self-empowerment basis. Like, you have to educate yourself as an artist and recognize the marketing tools and outlets that are available to you, recognize the do's and don'ts of managerial situations. Like, it's in today's day and age, it's easier than ever to obtain certain tidbits of knowledge and to apply that to your workflow. And I think that starting with a step by step basis of understanding, okay, let me stay in the studio, let me develop my sound, let me find something that is confident, that I'm confident in, let me find something that makes me unique to the rest of the landscape, right? Then elevating from there, kind of evolving from that situation of, okay, now who is my audience that I want to speak to? What does my audience look like? And what is the message that I'm trying to convey to them? Right? Your brand outline there. Like, who do I want this to reach and what do I want them to inherit about me? And if you really break that down about all the artists that you listen to, you can answer that question on their behalf, right? This person wants the healing type of music that resonates with people in the sense of, it might be, fixing the broken pieces of their spirit or whatever it might be. This other person is the party rock anthems, etc. It's the audiences for the people in Vegas and by the swimming pools. And you need to start answering these questions for yourself, right? Step by step basis. And then from there, you kind of start to scope the outline of what you are and what you represent as an artist, because everything has to be a value add. So, what value are you bringing to the listener, right? Inherently or subconsciously, that they recognize or that they see in you. And it all comes down to a self-education aspect, man. Self-education of learning how to separate passion from profit. And then once you recognize that path, right, you just slowly start to piece it together for yourself.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think I think out of the brand workshops that we run, one of the most valuable exercises in that is actually taking the pressure off you having to review. One of the hardest things to do is to do your own brand. it's near impossible. You know too much about yourself. You know all of your flaws and you know all of your attributes, and you struggle to decipher between them. And one of the best exercises that we run is think about what you want your fans to say about you, not what you want to say to your fans. Because what you want to say to your fans, that's a really hard, it's like you could say anything. But what do you want them to say about you? What do you want your cover arts to say to people? And we spoke about this earlier on in an episode. Like you see Damn by Kendrick Lamar behind on a wall on a video call. I know a bit about that person. I can get a bit of a handle on what they're about.
Absolutely.
I know how to navigate that conversation. What do
Well
you
said.
say as an artist when your album is behind on a video call? What does that album say to the other person on the other side of the phone? Because at the end of the day, this isn't about you as an artist. It's about what this means to the fan. What identity are they taking on when they become your fan? You know, like Swifties, there's an identity around that. Woo. I know where they
don't mess with that, gang.
I know where they lean politically. I know where they're like, what kind of, I know what they are. Like you've got a good handle and a good grasp of what kind of person is in that entity. And I think so often one of the things that we look for when signing artists to preach is like, do people also not like you?
Yeah.
Like you also not liked, because it's very, very hard to be loved by everybody.
100%.
And if you're loved by everyone, then no one really does love you deeply.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the questions that always presents itself is what makes something iconic? Is it not when it's either a love or hate divide, It's like the Cybertruck situation, right? It's like you either love it or you hate it. And to some people, that's what makes it an iconic entry into the automotive industry, right? It's the same thing about, let's take an artist of the highest caliber and regard, someone like Drake, right? I've never seen such a equal side of love and hate to an artist who is that successful and has that much prowess and reach. People either think it's the cheesiest thing, they clown the shit out of it or whatever, or they are diehard obsessed. And it's this entanglement of a love-hate relationship, even on both sides of the fence, And I think that's the question to ask yourself is, do you really give a fuck, right? Are you here for representation of the art, or are you here from some type of reach or grab of fame or a bag or whatever it might be, right? And I think the more true you stay to exploring and finding the boundaries and scope of your art, the more successful you will be, because there's a lot of times where, how do you explain the justification of heavy screaming metal to someone who's obsessed and only listens to pop music? You understand? Like, how are you supposed to explain that variable of demographic between the landscape of music? Like, how do you take a Swiftie and get her to understand the nature of a Slipknot fan? You understand? But it's because they stay true to their art and they convey a message and a value add to the listener. So Taylor Swift might embody everything that a young person might want to experience or not be able to articulate themselves for all their high school trials, all their early college trials of how to navigate love and relationships and this and that. Then whatever emotionally the fan of a Slipknot band might feel, it's whatever anguish they can't convey for themselves that comes back through the speakers. You understand? And it's because of the fact that they stayed true to the art. So that's the most important thing that I can give to people is understand the landmine that you're stepping into, so to say, and recognize that you need to carve a path for yourself. And it all starts with the art. It all starts with music, first and foremost. It's like the bread on either side of the sandwich. Like the meat and potatoes are important, but good bread can make or break a bite, Yeah,
I agree. And I think the last thing from my end on this is, I think there's, you mentioned this earlier on around what value do you bring to a fan. I think the most powerful and most successful artists understand that value is multi-layered, and one value proposition to one person is trash. Same value proposition to another person is treasure. And
Absolutely.
if you're looking at this and you
Well
figure
said.
out what your core identity is looking for, and this is in every single business has to do this, every single
Mm-hmm.
one. You have to identify who your target audience is, what is that persona, and then one of
Mm-hmm.
the other things to lock into, and I think this has been something that I've been building into the system and process a lot more recently. Originally, when you would do like an archetype of your core persona of an audience,
Mm-hmm.
you would do it based off where do they go, what coffee shop do they attend, what real world stuff, where do
Mm-hmm.
they live. Now I'm spending a lot of time reverse engineering what our core audience's feed looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Who are they following? What does their digital footprint feel like?
Mm-hmm.
What websites are they attending? How
Mm-hmm.
long are they spending on those websites? What blogs, what YouTube channels, what Netflix shows? Understanding their digital footprint essentially is just as valuable as understanding where their actual foot traffic goes in the real world. And
100%.
once you start to identify that, you can really get a good handle of who you're talking to. And then once you know who your audience is of fans, then you can start to identify the other value chains. A manager. Don't reach out to a manager and say you're talented.
Yeah.
They don't care. Labels don't care about your talent. They need more than that. Lots of people are talented. They
Mm-hmm.
need the value prop. The same thing that you've gone through for the art for the fans. You've got to identify that for the manager. How are you going to approach a manager to make it easy for them to say yes? How are you going to approach labels to make it easy for them to say yes? These are
Mm-hmm.
partners that are entering your world. You
Mm-hmm.
can't treat those relationships as like, I'm here. Like the
Yeah.
amount of DMs that I
Absolutely.
get from people with zero leverage, no sell. Oh yeah, I haven't released a song yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, but I think you'd be able to help. But like, it's too early for me to come in.
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely.
and I think that's something else to figure out through this cycle of value is understanding that every single partnership and exchange you enter, there is a value equation, and you can't
100%.
be asking for more than you're getting. That's you've
100%.
you've got to give the same as you get, and you've got to know where you are in the stages of your career, and you've got to be comfortable in those stages, because you can burn bridges by reaching out to the wrong people too quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
it's smarter to play the game at a speed that's manageable and obtainable, exactly the same as it would be if you were trying to start a clothing line. You're
Mm-hmm.
not going to go and order 350,000 units when you haven't sold a t-shirt yet. So
Mm-hmm.
sell a t-shirt, then sell 10, then sell 50, then sell 200, then sell 1,000, then build up to that. And along the way, talk to the suppliers and talk to the partners that are at that level of where you're at.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest pieces of advice to artists is just know where you are, know where you want to go, and go step by step.
Absolutely, bro. I think you summarized that perfectly. And to top it off, and it's talent doesn't make you famous, as you said. It's the most talented people in the world are busking on the corner. That you see a guitarist shredding on the corner in Times Square, New York, and you're like, "Holy shit! That's literally one of the greatest riffs I've ever heard." Or someone who might be playing at a local jazz bar or whatever. And I'm not taking away from any honest living or honest work or earning a proper wage in any regard. I'm saying in the capacity of how the consumer thinks that's going to convey to other people, it doesn't work that way. Talent does not make you famous. Your proper personal management of that talent is what makes you famous. And it's the same correlation to how money doesn't make you rich, right? Being rich might mean that you're afforded the opportunity to buy a couple things that you like a few times over. Being wealthy means that you never have to work again. You understand?
Mm.
That's the difference in understanding these psychologies. And it's the same thing for artists, in the sense of they think that just because they might get to a certain scope of somebody or someone who might be able to do that for them, it's not the basis of how thing works. So I think you summarized that perfectly, in the sense of it's a step-by-step approach, and that's the manner in which you conduct business for yourself, most certainly. So you hope that artists find this out and figure this out for themselves, and keep going. And if anybody hears this podcast and has something to say, we've gotten a bunch of DMs that have been awesome, very encouraging. A lot of people who
And
love what
also
we've been saying. So reach out.
loving,
Feel free to
but
share the advice,
also some constructive criticism that
which is the
I've enjoyed,
best and is
because
invited.
I'm hyperbolic. I like
Mm-hmm.
I'm all like dramatic in
Mhm.
some cases.
Mhm.
And I think that the last time we did the podcast, I realized that whilst it's beneficial to give that kind of advice of like extreme ownership and like that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
you've also got that everyone's different.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know,
It's not a one
and a
size fits
musician
all
and an
approach.
artist is an artist for a reason. They don't want to do the business side. That's not why they're
Yeah.
there. And
Yeah.
maybe they have to do a little bit more of it, but the answer is not to do all of it, because
No.
otherwise you've just changed who you are, and you're just going to be unhappy and miserable. It'd be
Yeah.
like asking me to go and be an accountant. It's not going to happen.
No.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think it's just it's an interesting dynamic when you jump on these mics and we talk shit, and then you've got people on the other side that are like, I don't know, and it's a cool. I like the
100%. It's invited, because perspective is always proper, and in regards to that person and how they interpret something, it's fair game, right?
Yeah.
The only thing that I would say that I think is very beneficial to artists, of course, is what we touched on last episode. Is there's so many outlets out there for how you can utilize like free resource, whether it's instrumentation or what you look for online, or learning how to educate yourself on mix templates, or mix templates you could purchase for very cheap amounts that help elevate the scope of audio, and like all these things that teach you how to empower yourself as an artist. The one thing that I would say that I do think is essential is a company like Preach, if they're afforded the opportunity and the stars align for it to be the right time. Like, I do think a valuable distribution partner is of the utmost importance, because they help facilitate a lot of shit, man. Like, when it comes to actually administering the songs, getting them out there, making sure they're properly formatted across the different DSPs, editorial pitches, helping with profile setups and playlist portals and pitch portals for the artists and whatnot. A good distribution partner is of the utmost importance, I think, to independent artists.
Agreed.
And it is wholeheartedly worth the range of the 10 to 30%, depending on what monetary exchange occurs and whatnot. But I always recommend that to these young artists when I speak to them and I see that they're at a certain caliber, or not necessarily a certain caliber, but a certain place of their career. A good distribution partner is priceless to a lot of indies.
And the other thing is, a good distribution partner will also tell you when it's not the right time.
Exactly.
And I think that's one of the big things, is just working with people that are honest with you and not taking that to offense. Some of the most we turn down some of the most talented artists, but they're in the wrong genre for us. Like, I would rather say no to a deal and say no to 100 deals and have 100 artists not hate us because we did a shit job.
Exactly.
And I think the more distribution platforms that start thinking like that, of like specialization and really like locking in on what you're truly good at and understanding that value equation to an artist and being really clear on that. I know exactly who we can help, and I know every single artist we can't.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the same thing artists should do. They should know the exact label that can help and every label that can't. And I think being clear on what you want as well is very important, because
absolutely,
working with a label doesn't, or a distribution partner doesn't actually change your world
at all.
It's a factor in the equation, but it's not the end game. I think sometimes there was a past world where maybe it was. Maybe signing a label deal was it for you. Like, it was like you're now off your Justin Timberlake. God. But that's not the case anymore. It's never going to be the best decision you ever make. It's going to be one of the decisions you have to make. But I think, in other news, for people that aren't in the music industry, I read an incredible article the other day
about
dating and its impact on the economy.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear this one.
So there was an article written, I can't remember her name, but she is incredible. I'll put it in the captioning thing. This article basically was fully about dating apps, the rise and fall of dating apps,
Oh shit. The Tinders of the world,
The
or
Tinders of the world, the Bumbles of the world, the
uh-huh.
Match.coms of the world, and its impact on the economy.
I'm actually curious to hear this in regards to like nightlife and scope of how it
In
limits or
regards to nightlife, and I think the way I want to take this conversation is I
mm-hmm.
want to give a couple of stats that stood out to me,
Mm-hmm.
and then I want to spitball our gut feelings
Mm-hmm.
on what areas of the economy have been impacted by dating apps,
Yeah.
and then actually get the answer afterwards.
Yeah. I'm actually curious because instinct would tell you that, you know, like the guy or the girl, they're still gonna go out to dinner, they're still gonna have a couple drinks, but statistically how that breaks down, I'm not sure. That's not really my world, you know?
And it does, the article doesn't go that granular. It's more like
Mm.
think of it from a macro perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I can't move my shoulder. I just dislocated the other day, and it's like every time I move it for dramatic effect, it's painful. So I need to.
Dan was lifting a 5-pound book yesterday and threw a shoulder out.
Yeah, exactly. I was charging my phone.
Exactly.
But so it's more focused on an aging population, an aging single population. We're about to like 3x the amount of single people over the age of 65 years old.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So you're going to have a single aging, no savings because they've been ransacked through a divorce, both sides. So you've got
divorce is very
people
expensive.
that are relying on government.
Quick question: Is this Western culture? Is this global summary, or it does not state specifically?
I'm dyslexic.
Okay,
I've read the article.
Link the article in the description, man.
I will.
You know?
I will. I'll link the article in the description. Everyone can go read it. But basically, it's about to 3x. So the impact on the economy based off that is wild. So more people need to be cared for because often your partner would care for you,
or your kids.
Right? 47% of the population right now of marriage age is married.
47%.
Yeah. So under half of the population is in a relationship.
Okay. So the birth rate is already fucked in that regard.
So you have a birth rate in decline.
Ugh.
Right? And you have an aging population single.
Okay. Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
So there's two aspects to that. There's one aspect for the fact that there is need for physical care. So these people need to be physically cared for. And the category of healthcare is in decline for people applying to be healthcare professionals. And then on the other side, you need to float the economy with wealth from people under the age of 30. And we are the first generation that is not making as much money as our parents were before we were 30.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got people who are older holding positions of power.
Yeah.
So younger people can't take the positions of power because older people have to work for longer. But then the lion's share of that age bracket is retiring while the top 5% make all the money.
Shit.
It's like a minefield of factors.
Yeah.
Fascinating, though.
Fascinating. Is there any mention of what percentage of the dating population actually meets through these apps?
There wasn't an exact number, but so you have 79% of women are uninterested in using dating apps in the future.
They're not interested?
Are uninterested in using a dating app in the future.
Wow.
Crazy. You've got 63% of men under the age of 30 are single compared
to... What
to
percentage?
63% of men under the age of 30 are single.
Jesus
You have 34% of women under the age of 30 are single. So what that tells you is women are dating up. So they're not dating people their own age, which they never really have. But I think that's just got significantly more extreme.
Wow.
Because they've found men their own age to be immature because they are. Right now, you've got a lot, like university graduates, mostly female right now.
Yes.
You've got a higher education. You've got entry-level jobs. Women are being paid more than men in certain categories and certain elements, like PR, things like that. So you've got successful women going, I want a successful man. to find that successful man, they've got to date a decade plus older to be able to achieve that objective. Then
Wow.
in turn, you're dating older, potentially out of childbearing age. So you're now just making a decision to not have a child.
Wow. This is very interesting.
Right. And then you've got men, a giant number of men are not going sexless before 25.
Yeah.
So you've got this decline of that. Then you've got Gen Z, who's like, only 26% of college students in the United States are
Of Gen Z.
So college age, which is Gen Z and under, are using dating apps. 26%.
Really?
It's really low.
Well, wow. Statistically, it says, as of a recent study, about 39% of relationships in the US now begin through online dating platforms.
Yep.
So I wonder how those contradict each other in the sense of, I don't know, maybe that's the other 60% is the Gen Zs.
I think there's a big collide. I think there is a significant volume of young people still meeting on apps because it's the only place to really meet. But my takeaway from this article was anybody that has some spare time right now should be creating dating events. Like you should just be creating real world dating events, charge a monthly subscription. The app sets up locations for people to meet at. You do cool stuff. You do partnerships with run clubs. You do
vetted background checks.
Vetted background checks. Creepiness not allowed.
No.
I just think there's there's an opportunity, especially for brands with a pre-approved type of person that shops there. Like if you are a type of person that is using Lululemon, like you have an opportunity as a brand to be able to create events that allow people to meet.
100%.
So I just think there's a giant business opportunity. One of the biggest questions and biggest decisions you make in your life is who you're going to partner with for the rest of it.
The most important. Far and away the most important decision of your life.
The biggest. And right now we have a platform, a technology that is dictating that. So and what I mean by that is you have Tinder and Bumble and all of these apps running on a subscription service. So their job, their business incentives is not for you to find your lover and leave the platform.
No.
Their business incentive is for you to find someone for this weekend.
Wow, wait, they're all subscription based now?
Pretty much.
Wow.
I haven't been on one since 2016. But
wow, I literally swear to you, I've never used one. I met my wife when I was 21 years old. We've been together for 12 plus years. I think that was at the forefront of when these apps came to fruition.
100%.
This is a real conversation, though. This is a real conversation to be had.
And I look at it through the lens of what a business opportunity this is. You have the most important decision that you have to make as a human being. You have the most important decision you have to make, and you're finding them on platforms that are not incentivized for you to find that partner.
Yeah, they're trying to make it a randomized one-night stand situation. And think about what it does to the psyche of the consumer when it's a swipe left or swipe right. I don't know, whatever is the confirmation of you finding someone attractive or compatible, right? It's such a vanity-based approach to the situation that it's destructive. It's as destructive as it possibly can be for you to just have the dopamine hits of swiping, and then getting the match, and then both sides of the situation kind of having the intention of already knowing what it is. You understand? And then some people have to put up a front for maybe looking for a deeper connection, but it's already the standard is so diluted across the space that it's just an entirely fucked situation, to be honest with you.
And honestly, when you look at how successful young women are becoming now, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, they're way more emotionally equipped younger than men. So
Which is by default too. It's not even the standard of how today's approach is. Women, statistically
yeah,
speaking, developmental wise, find emotional intelligence at a
100%.
far sooner age than men do. You see it amongst your peers, especially when I watch the dynamic of nieces and nephews and the children in my life around me. Like the females normally arrive at that basis much earlier than men do.
100%. And then now they're sitting there on dating apps, and you've got 80% of women chasing 20% of men.
Yeah, which we've touched on, the
You know,
6 feet 6 figure approach.
yeah.
You
So
know,
you just got this dilemma right now of, this societal challenge. And I guess I think it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me
mm-hmm.
to read through this and sort of understand that you've got this financial interest actually shifting our economic standing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have these platforms, which essentially is owned by one company. I think it's Match.com. They bought Tinder. They bought most of the platforms. So you have this one company.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I wish I was better at
Wow.
remembering shit after reading it. But
Wow.
there's essentially one company that's owning a lot of these platforms, and I think that's scary when you look at that and you go, the economic environment that they're sitting in, the only thing that's true is what right now they are stock price wise in decline. This is Gen Z stats coming out. Crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Wait, I have to touch on that statistic you just shared. So Match Group, which obviously is the owner and operator of
Yeah.
Match.com, they own Tinder, they own Hinge, they own OkCupid, they own Plenty of Fish, they obviously own Match.com.
So you got
And
one.
up
That's
until up
crazy.
until recently, they owned Bumble as well, but they separated after having a legal dispute. That is insane. That has to be the
So they've
craziest
literally
revelation that I've heard in a long time.
I think the scary part about it is the fact that it dictates our culture.
Of course it does.
It dictates our mindset. It dictates it's made us a hookup culture. One company, one entity has formed us into hookup culture that's not even very good at it.
Do you
Like
know how
what?
much they made last year in
How much?
revenue? Take a
How much?
guess. Take a guess.
I couldn't even begin to guess what that group would have formed.
3.36 billion.
3.36 billion.
Billion, brother, with a B. That is incredible. That is so alarming in so many ways that I don't have the words for it right now, to be
That's what I
quite
mean.
frank.
Like I just read through this thing and I was like, crazy. Like Bumble is down 90% since the year it IPO'd.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's insane. Like that's what something is shifting culturally where we are obviously moving away from this. I still
Yeah.
think a lot of people are meeting on there because it's a means to an end, but the
Mm-hmm.
psychological impact that this has on you when you are on a dating app, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the world is an option. It's an endless swipe. You're not constricted by location. You're not constricted by, where you are based, the town you grew up in, none of that. So
Yeah.
your that plenty of fish in the sea feeling becomes global,
Mm-hmm.
and it leads you into this false sense of security that everything's an option when there's actually some substantial barriers to that person being a legitimate part of your life. And I think
Yeah.
that the impact that that has on you and the fact that you always have this sort of next up mentality, especially if you're one of the 20% of men that 80% of women are chasing, and if
Mm-hmm.
you're one of the 80% of men, you're like, how do I play this game? This isn't a good game
100%.
for me.
And I think that contributes to the recent factors and statistics about how we were talking about this a couple episodes ago, is that 38% of the young demographic of 18 to 30 years old was sexless, no sexual partner in the previous year, which comparative to other generations is way lower than what it used to be comparative to our generation or the boomers or whoever it might be, which the boomers, that they, tisk tisk, they were the most promiscuous generation. But it was the 60s, the 70s, the love era. It was very open ended. And there's a lot of factors that contribute to that today. I don't necessarily think it's just the basis of these dating apps. You know, stress levels are higher than they've ever been because of fiscal, situations, monetary situations. People are overworked. All this, the retention,
But
the
also the stress of not having a
retention.
partner.
100%.
Like the notion of dying alone is scary.
Of course,
like
it's a catch-22 situation. It's the sense of, think about how much shit is being thrown at you all day, and all you're doing is just inheriting people's highlights of their life all day and night of just scrolling, and the amount of information and content that is being processed by the youth is staggering. Like it wasn't the basis of what life was comparative to even 15 years ago, before these social media platforms boomed and became the dominant aspect of inheritance of information that it is today. And mental health struggles that correlate from that, and all the different basis of things. It's much easier for people. There's an easier outlet for people who are struggling to become isolated in the sense of what makes them comfortable. They don't have to leave their house. They can get a delivery right to their front door for when they want to eat. They don't even have to interact with the rest of society. So the basis in which you might meet a lot of people, or those approaches might have happened, those are gone too, And some of my friends, when I have discussions with them and they're asking for relationship advice and whatnot, the only thing that I always know to say, because I am not an expert in the field, and I'm looking forward to the times that we have the opportunities to have these discussions with experts, but one of the tidbits of advice that I always give is do what you love. Like, go out there and do what you love, and the probability of you finding someone that you're compatible with is much higher. Like, if you like to go out to shows, or you want to go hang out at a jazz club, or you want to go on hikes or something like that, keep yourself in those type of entanglements, and God willing, something good comes from it. Because I consider myself very lucky in the manner in which I met my wife, and we've talked about it on the previous episode, but it's one of those things where I don't know what else to say, to be honest with you, because it's a scary situation and prospect of the world that we're facing. And I think soon enough, one of the first guests that we should take on to the show is a good relationship expert that could really touch on the state of the world, where things are, and where it's going. Because I think the biggest crisis facing a majority of the world population is the declining birth rates, to where now countries and governments are doing whatever they can to incentivize younger people to have more children. I know in Japan and other places of the world, like the gap that's about to happen in the next 10 years is incredibly dangerous, and something that faces us in a manner that we're not ready to confront yet,
100%. And I think the last stat that I will read out is half of males and females in dating age aren't even looking for a relationship.
They're just looking for a quick hit, huh?
50% identify as not looking for a committed or casual relationship.
That's terrible.
Yeah. 10% are looking for a casual relationship only. Then you got 14% looking for a committed relationship, and 26% looking for either.
Wow, so basically just a quarter of people are actually down to...
You literally have 50%, 50% of the population are just disinterested, asexual to the whole situation.
They just want to get down. Like, they're just looking for a good night,
That's not even true, because casual...
it says that they're not even looking for...
It says not looking for a committed relationship or casual dates.
Wow.
Then you've got 10% looking for casual dates only. Then you've got 14% looking for a committed relationship. And you've got 26% looking for either.
Oh, wow.
So you just got a defeated, half of the population defeated, give up. And you got to imagine, like, it doesn't say here what the gender skew of that is, but if I had to guess, that would be mostly men, because I think women are aging.
Wow, man.
So you've got a significant value of the population that is just disinterested. And the problem when you become disinterested in the opposite sex, especially for men, a lot of the driving forces behind you wanting to be successful, you wanting to achieve things in
Of
life,
course.
is to be appealing to the opposite sex. So if
Of
you've given
course.
up on that,
It's
what is
instinct.
the driver for you to push forward?
Yeah, of course, man. That's the basis in which nature has evolved. You understand? Is the ascension of rank, so to say, quote unquote, to be appealing to the opposite sex. It's what's been driven into our subconscious from the time you literally touch your first fire truck as a kid. And um I mean, these are revelations that we always say that you always have to try and find the silver lining. And I think the silver lining in this basis of situation is the fact that the younger generation, because
Yeah.
of the interface of the world that they were born into, they're trying to break that mold, right?
Yeah.
Like Gen Z is a huge advocate and voice of reason for mental health, for lessening the pressures of a work week. There's experimentation happening in different places in different industries of the 4-day work week approach now. And I think those are the aspects that we have to try and bring this back to and try and focus on, is the fact that you're saying statistically Gen Z doesn't even want to necessarily hop on these dating apps anymore. And it's the same manner in which for us as millennials, now on the back half of the demographic, it's the same thing of the interface of the world that we were born into, right? There was a lot of things that were overconsumption based that we broke the mold for, right? So you have to put your faith into the youth of learning how to transcribe and trendset in the right regard, and kind of break the mold for themselves of how they're going to actually navigate this world, because it's a fascinating landscape for the day, the time and place that we're at right now. And I think it's such a unique intersection that we've previously touched on with regards to, the implementation of AI and where all this stuff is going, that I definitely think we're at the crossroad of seeing where life is going to unfold over the next half decade, right? Because on a couple of episodes ago, we were even talking about the aspect of virtual girlfriends. You understand?
Yeah.
And then you have young males and youths who have services like OnlyFans and stuff like that, where they can go and spend $5 to $10 to consume whatever basis of content it is that they want. You understand?
Yeah.
And get that dopamine hit in that regard and whatnot. So we have to focus on the aspect of encouraging the youth to break the mold in that regard. Stay active, stay out, stay engaged, and hopefully someone listening to this or your brain constructs something that allows these dating events to take place and encourages people to come and meet each other and engage with the opposite sex, the same sex, whatever it might be for you, in whatever capacity that makes you happy or how you may identify yourself. That's the only focus that we can place, and that's the only hope that we could lay actual foundation to.
And I think where I'm getting to now, and I think I've always been mainly an advocate of just putting effort towards something. I actually think it's more than that now. I think we need to do a much better job of equipping the youth for success. We need to invest
Absolutely
into their setup and their situation, because right now we can't afford to have 2 generations making less than our parents.
no.
Like, if our kids do that with us, then we are in a level of
deep
decline
shit.
that
Yeah.
can't afford to sustain an aging population. And that's when
No.
you start running down the bread lines. And I think
100%.
we need to figure out that solution and invest into that, because right now the lion's share of all taxpayer money goes to keeping people alive, not investing into young people.
Yeah,
And
and
that has to change.
100%, man. And we'll see where the scope of the world goes. Like I said, it's a critical intersection time.
But this goes back to our very first episode. We spoke about, with great challenges becomes great opportunity. And this, for me, is a fucking quantum opportunity.
Absolutely.
If you want to make a lot of money in the next decade,
And improve the basis of the world.
this is a problem that, if solved, you could be the next Match.com on the flip side of this challenge. And I think
Absolutely.
that's my challenge to every badass killer listening to this podcast right now is,
Mm-hmm.
if you're sitting there and you're like, I don't have a business idea, this is it.
Yeah,
Pick
absolutely.
a section of this vertical and talk to that audience, because
Absolutely.
the money that's on the other side of that solution, people, you already know, based on this, you already know people are willing to invest into finding a partner.
Yes.
They just
To the
don't want
tune
to
of
do it this
3.36
way
billion.
anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because if they were, the IPO wouldn't be like, they wouldn't be 90%, 80% down off IPO. So
Yeah.
they have proven they're willing to invest. So you have a market that is willing to put money towards something. All you need to do is create a service that matches that market.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to get ready to go against the monopoly. But I think there's opportunities at all different scales. I think you could go and raise a shitload of money. You go head to head. That's one option. The other option is to start a run club in wherever you are in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Start a run club. Go to a bar
that
or
tackles
a pub.
both sides of the issue.
Go to
it
a bar or a
encourages good
pub
health and fucking networking
and say
opportunity.
to them, look, I'm going to do a night here, and I'm going to take a corner of this pub and its phone-free zone, and I'm going to work with two brands that are going to sponsor the alcohol and sponsor some whatever edibles to help things move. Yay. And just to like get it happening, and then start that path, and then figure out whatever, if you don't drink, figure out the non-alcoholic version of that. Like there is so many opportunities here on a grassroots level. And I think that's where the major change is going to happen. And the giant trend out of this is just run clubs right now. They are just the business model around run clubs is the loyalty that's formed from them is out of this world. And if you're a supplement company, if you're a protein company, whatever you are in the health sector, if you don't have a run club or if you don't have a real world community, literally poke yourself in the eye for missing the opportunity.
Yeah, man. I think it correlates back to any other health endeavor that people go on. Once you get a hit of the dopamine and the endorphins that are released, you're addicted to it. And
100%.
you're addicted to it in the right basis, right? Like health is wealth. And when you feel good about yourself and you get that energetic release, and at the same time, you're making connection, which correlates back to our instinctive approach as humans. Like, of course, that's a win-win formula. Like that just sounds like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah. And paddle, tell. If you're out there right now, it's a great mixed sport. You
love that shit. I see your highlights on IG all the time. You know what I mean? My man got the wicked backhand. It's
tough being great.
He's the Andy Roddick of his generation.
But one of the fun things about it is a good mixed sport. It's a sport I can play with my wife, so it's a great date. It's a great mixer. There's just so many opportunities to reframe what dating means and take it offline.
Yeah. Shout out my boy EC, man. This dude's been pushing me to come play with him for literally the last year, and I owe him like a season's worth of games,
Just go play.
He even bought the paddles. He found courts that are closer to me.
But as long as if it's pickleball, I ain't your friend.
Nah, he plays them both.
Yeah, pickleball can go kick rocks, but
pickleball and paddleball.
Paddleball's significantly less girly. I mean,
listen, when you come to the States, I'm going to smoke you in both of them either way, whatever we play. Okay, so get your practice in because I'm coming.
I would supply you with my left arm if you beat me.
Like, you don't even know. I'm ambidextrous. I write with my right hand and left. Throw with my left.
I would be fine to, if I lose left arm.
It's cross hand dominance, baby. Only 2% of the population. All right. All right. So put that in your stat pipe and smoke it, my friend.
The competitive Aussie's going to come out.
All right, man. Bring all your backup. Bring your gang. I'll take you all out. That's what it is. But last but not least, I appreciate you being the greatest co-host of all time. Okay, you're the man. I'm always grateful for your time and your insight, and for us exploring this podcast together. We appreciate each and every one of our listeners. We've had surprising statistics in the first couple episodes that we're very happy with, and we're very grateful for. The few thousand listeners collectively that we've had, we're very grateful to have this opportunity, to have this platform, to have these conversations. The socials are growing day over day. The 320 plus on IG in the first month, that might sound small to others. We're grateful for each and every one of the follows, and we really hope to ramp this up over the next coming months. We are going to stay formidable in our approach to making sure that these episodes get up weekly, and in the next coming weeks start exploring the opportunity of having guests on. So something to definitely look forward to. And I appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate you, Dan, the most, and God bless, and talk soon.
Likewise. Enjoy.
Thank you, brother. See you guys next time.